Boo! Boo! Sam? Samuel!
Hey guys, what is up? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be taking a look at The Witch, the 2015 supernatural horror film written and directed by Robert Eggers, starring the talented Anya Taylor-Joy, Harvey Scrimshaw, Ralph Ineson, and Kate Dickie as a Puritan family that kept encountering evil forces in the woods surrounding their New England farm. The film stands out from the plethora of horror films of late as it steers clear of jump scares and excessive gore, and instead uses our society's collective understanding of archaic superstitions, religious oppression, and misogyny to craft a delectable tale of a family unfortunate enough to cross paths with the devil himself. The masterful Robert Eggers, who himself hails from the same region the story was set in, used his childhood fascination with witches as his inspiration for the film, and after unsuccessfully pitching films that production companies thought were too weird and obscure, Eggers decided to make a genre film that was personal to him.
I grew up in New England, and New England's past was always part of my consciousness, I wanted to make an archetypal New England horror story, and witches are the archetypal New England spook. So, plus, witches, I've always been interested in witches. My earliest nightmares were about witches, so this was going to be a genre film that was really something that would be personal.
His production team then travelled throughout England and America, visiting museums and experts on 17th century culture to better acquaint themselves with the time period, and after numerous months of research, the director had finally written the backbone of the story. All the props and sets were era-specific, with the production team spending weeks to recreate the town and farm that the family would eventually erect near the forest.
Simply enough, if those details aren't there, I can't actually bring you back to the 17th century. And the thing is for me to really make something transportive, I feel like I need to be recreating my memory. The stitching has to be right, the dust has to be right, every little thing has to be right for the film to actually transport you.
The cast were even trained to speak in the Essex dialect of the time, creating an authentic, unsettling, yet always beautiful cinematic experience. Eggers and his cinematographer, Jaron Blaish, also went to great lengths to ensure that the environment surrounding the family was a character in and of itself. Because the team had a small budget to make the film, they were relying heavily on tax incentives to get the shoot up and running, and after getting no luck in the desired New England area, they ended up securing a deal in Canada. The crew then found a remote town in Ontario that was so small that it made New Hampshire look like a metropolis, leading them to set up shop there. The film begins with the banishment of William and his devout Christian family after the man voiced his differing interpretations of the New Testament. Forced out of the security and comfort they had in the Commonwealth, William, his wife Catherine, their eldest daughter Thomason, son Caleb, and fraternal twins Mercy and Jonas began making a new start for themselves by building a farm on the edge of a large secluded forest. From the very beginning, we could see that Thomason was different from her family, as a single sheep in the flock that expressed distress over their banishment from town. She is also the last person to leave the church, and is the only one to look back, almost pleading for a chance to stay in the colony.
Thomason.
Even before the supernatural horrors had begun to beset the family, the young girl was filled with doubt about her faith and her worthiness to enter the kingdom of heaven. Either way, it's extremely important to note that she longed for the love of Christ and begged for his mercy and grace to save her soul from fiery torment at the start of the film. Unfortunately for Thomason, we'll soon come to find out that she was marked by the devil for acquisition, and the entire plot of this supernatural horror is his attempt to recruit her into his coven. All seemed to be going well for the family at the start, with Catherine giving birth to their fifth child, Samuel. Mercy and Jonas could also be seen having the time of their lives, playing with a large black goat they had affectionately named Black Phillip. However, while Thomason was playing peekaboo with the baby, it disappeared, with only the audience being aware that it was taken by a witch who killed it and used it in a ritual. Catherine spent the next few days in distress after being informed by William that it was likely a wolf that had taken the baby, leading the family to forbid the rest of the children from entering the forest alone. William then took his son Caleb hunting, and he revealed to him that he had stolen his wife's treasured silver cup and traded it for hunting supplies. Caleb also started becoming fearful that Sam had been taken because he lived in sin, and began to worry that his own apparent sinful life would lead to his demise.
Was Samuel born a sinner?
Aye.
How might then...
We pray he hath entered God's kingdom. Look you, I love thee marvellous well. But 'tis God alone, not man, what knows who was the son of Abraham and who was not, who was good and who was evil.
Sometime after this, while Thomason and Caleb were gathering water, Mercy came up and accused Thomason of being a witch, blaming her for Sam's disappearance. Annoyed by her younger sister, Thomason played along with the accusation, saying not only was she a witch, but that she would also get her sister if she continued to annoy her. The very next day, Caleb and Thomason went out to check the trap that he and his father had set the day before. Once they are inside the forest, their dog hastily chases a rabbit, leading Caleb to follow, while his sister was knocked off the horse and lost consciousness. Getting lost along the way, Caleb eventually stumbled onto a small cottage and was lured in by a beautiful woman revealed to be another witch that lived in the forest. Thomason later found her brother in the rain, both naked and psychologically scarred, and after they brought him in, Mercy and Jonas continued to accuse Thomason of witchcraft to the point that even their distraught mother began to believe it. Caleb then began to convulse and speak a prayer confessing his love for the Lord and his eagerness to meet him. Both Mercy and Jonas also started to scream and speak prayers leading to the death of Caleb, who appeared to accept his transition to the other side. I think it should be noted that this was not God's work but the devil's, with both Jonas and Mercy being manipulated by Black Phillip. After the death of Caleb, William also began to accuse his daughter of evil doing that led to both Sam and Caleb's death, forcing her to defend herself by suggesting it was perhaps Mercy and Jonas that had made a demonic pact with Black Phillip, foreshadowing the deal that she would eventually make with the devil herself. Unsure what to do next, William then locked his 3 remaining children in the barn along with the goats, only to have his wife confess that Sam was actually born from an affair that she had had with another man. By this stage, Catherine is so distraught and riddled with guilt that she began to lose her mind, seeing a vision of Caleb holding Samuel, leading her to breastfeed what she thought was her baby, but in reality was just a crow picking at her bosom while she laughed gleefully. The kids in the barn then noticed a nude figure drinking blood from one of the goats, which turned around to reveal it was a witch. William then came out of his home the next day to find the barn in tatters, Mercy and Jonas missing, and Thomason waking up in front of him, seconds before he was impaled by Black Phillip. And though William immediately armed himself with a hatchet, he ended up dropping it intentionally, allowing the goat to kill him. The reason for this was simple. The poor man had lost everything he valued and had nothing to live for, and he eagerly awaited his arrival into the kingdom of heaven. Catherine then came out of the house and began attacking Thomason for the destruction of their entire family. Left without any other alternative, Thomason then grabbed the nearby blade and killed her mother. That very evening, Thomason demanded to speak to Black Phillip, and after a brief moment of silence, we heard his voice explain what it could offer to her in return for her soul. We also got a brief glimpse of the devil in human form as it guided her to undress and sign his book of souls. Following the goat into the woods, the devil led Thomason towards a coven of witches who were all dancing nude around a fire, performing a ritual that ended with a lot of them floating towards the sky, including Thomason, while Black Phillip watched from below. I know a lot of people were confused as to why she made the decision to sign her name in the devil's ledger, but in that moment of weakness and desperation, it was the only option left to her. I mean, she had clearly loved her family and took no joy in their demise. However, they were still dead, and she was still left alone with a handful of options: to either remain on the farm and starve to death, travel back to the Commonwealth on foot, where she would likely be tried as a witch, or join the devil. In the end, while the other alternatives were likely death, the most prevalent thing that led to her decision was the absence of God's presence in her life. As mentioned earlier, she prayed for his mercy and grace, only to have her family betray her and then die. With the exception of Caleb, who was led astray by temptation, her younger siblings bore false witness against her. Her father revealed himself to be a prideful hypocrite, and her mother simply saw her as pure evil. In truth, they were all corrupted over time by Black Phillip. Even so, how was she supposed to contend with all of this on her own? As a Puritan, Thomason likely believed that she had already broken her covenant with God by taking her mother's life, and that she wasn't welcome in the kingdom of heaven as a result of this. This is what makes her downfall so tragic, as in a single act of desperation and despair, she'd essentially turned her back on a God that she loved for the opportunity to live deliciously, as the devil had put it to her. By this stage, it's very clear to see that her family's puritanical beliefs oppressed and marginalized the young Thomason. I mean, they were prepared to sell her to another family due to disdain over Sam's disappearance, but more importantly, they distrusted her sexuality. She was growing into a pretty young woman whose desirous appeal even distracted the repressed Caleb, which made her a burden in the eyes of her parents, who saw her as something to be wary of. It's not until she finally makes a pact with the devil that Thomason experiences freedom and liberation for the first time. It's no wonder then that she gleefully accepted the kinship of other equally liberated women in the woods. The Witch is a triumphant exploration into religious oppression, isolation, paranoia, and witchcraft, driven by the choices a family make to survive the harsh elements of a 17th century country.
For me, like, real horror is not about jump scares. Like, you know, like that can be fun for a moment, absolutely, but it's like, you know, I'm more interested in really looking at what is dark in humanity and actually like horrific. And that's, you know, not how we necessarily think about the genre today, but it was what interested me.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thanks to all of you guys who requested an explanation of The Witch. If there's any other stuff you'd like me to check out, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
Who's there?
I be the witch of the wood.
Mercy, come out.
I be not Mercy. I be the witch of the wood, and I have come to steal you.
I be a washing father's clothes like a slave, and thou art playing idle.
Because mother hates you.
Spoilt child. Tell mother you have left the farm alone.
Black Phillip says I can do what I like.
Devil take your black Phillip. I be the witch of the wood.
Liar, liar.
I am.
Listen not to her, Mercy.
I am that very witch. When I sleep, my spirit slips away from my body and dances naked with the devil.